Well, it's a lot better than we usually do.
Alright, chums up.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leroy Dragons!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Hey everybody, and welcome back for episode 15 of LFR, the casual podcast for casual players of the World of Warcraft, where we make the lore of Warcraft more accessible than Pandaria. Seriously, the mist is gone, guys. You could just go there now. You could even take a portal if you wanted. We're your hosts, Sirithe
and Dracoris. LFR usually stands for looking for raid, but this week it stands for Lou fucking with results. Because this week's poll on Twitter was going Gul'dan's way, until my partner decided that she wanted to hear about pandas. And you guys delivered. Thank you all for joining us for another episode diving into an aspect of lore in the World of Warcraft. This week, as you may have guessed, we are going to be talking about Chen Stormstout, after a Twitter poll that my girlfriend absolutely fixed the results of.
which I'm still a little bit mad about, but anyways.
You love me! You really love me!
So, we have no new reviews this week, which is totally cool. But if you were so inclined to leave us a review, please do go to either your preferred podcasting platform or the Warcraft Radio directory. And if the whole Patreon thing isn't for you, then leaving a review and telling people about our show really is the best way to support us. Mm-hmm. Now, before we get into the lore, we have some news. So, in the news this week, no, earth-shattering news or anything, but the Race to World First did start yesterday, and as of the time of this recording, we're recording a little bit ahead of our normal schedule, but as of right now, Limit is in the lead at 5 of 10 already in Mythic, so, they may go back to back to back.
Honestly, I'm just glad that one of us pays attention to this stuff. I mean, I'm a lore geek. As far as I'm concerned, this is some books that happen to have a video game attached to it. So I know nothing about the Race to World First, other than that it's a thing, and I hope some of you are enjoying it.
I love watching it. It's like watching sports, but something that I'm much closer to actually being able to compete in than any other sport I watch. Not that I'm saying I'm really close to the level that these World First Raiders are on, but I can understand what they're doing and almost do the same thing.
Hey, take what you can get, dude.
Yeah, true. And other than that, we do have our Patreon now. You can find us on patreon.com/LFRWildcast. And as always, we want to say thanks to all of our patrons. As of right now, we have no new patrons, which is totally fine. Honestly, the support we've gotten already has blown our minds and been way beyond anything we ever expected for this show. And we do have a special shout out, as always, for our AOTC patrons, who will be getting their name read out every episode until we decide, no, not us, until they decide we aren't worth their money anymore. So we have Gershom, who's now a co-host on the Thrall's Balls podcast. Congratulations, Gershom. We have Sky Shrouder, also known as Dracoris' DM. And we have Mud from Gratz. So, again, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, honestly, we are still blown away by the support that we've received so far. We now have 6 patrons, which is 6 more than we expected to have any time in the next, we weren't even planning on launching this until the end of this month, originally. So, just thank you to all of you, really. And yeah, if you do enjoy listening to this show and you think that it's worth, $1 an episode, come and sign up on our lowest tier. If, like some of the complete psychopaths whose names have just been read out, you actually think we're worth $5 an episode, please do come along and sub at the highest tier, and there's even a middle one for those of you who just can't decide.
So let's see if anybody's looking for anybody to play with this week.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
So, this week, we didn't have any specific requests for LFR, which is totally cool. This is a segment for you guys. if you ever need some extra help. But if your guild is looking for members, or even if you just want to shout your guild out for being fantastic, you can hit us up on Twitter or by email, and we'll give it a shout out here. And now, with all that being said, I think it's time we should talk some lore.
And how is education supposed to make me feel smarter? Besides, every time I learn something new, it pushes some old stuff out of my brain.
So, after a 2-episode hiatus due to, covering new lore, this week I've once again asked my partner Lou what she knows about the topic. So, on the subject of Chen Stormstout, she said, he's a brewer, he has a cool beard, I think he's the one you do all the opening quests with in Pandaland, with all the barrels and stuff, and he's got a cool dungeon, the Stormstout Brewery, I think. He might have something to do with a dragon, the Jade Serpent or something like that, not sure. Oh, and he's too cool to wear a dress. So, Sirithe, what do you think about that rundown there from Lou?
That was a pretty good one, actually. I don't know quite too much about Chen. I skipped a good chunk of Mists when it first came out and got back into it late. So, there may be some inaccuracies there. I couldn't tell you, but hey, she hit the most important part of Chen Stormstout, and that's that he's a brewmaster, so.
Absolutely. A legendary brewmaster, in fact. So, yeah, I think she did a pretty good job. So,
agreed.
Who is Chen Stormstout, really? Let's find out.
I am Chen Stormstout.
So, Chen Stormstout, a Pandaren, in case that hasn't been made clear already, was was born on the Wandering Isle, which is a massive landmass on the back of the giant turtle Shenzin Su. And no, fear, if you ever listen to this, fear from Morally Grey, the turtle isn't Pandaria. The Wandering Isle is a separate thing. So, while on the Wandering Isle, he developed amazing fighting skills and a desire to explore and discover new lands, making him sort of a throwback to the travelling Pandaren who left Pandaria thousands of years before to, form the community on the Wandering Isle. Over time, though, his sense of wanderlust grew, and eventually he left the Wandering Isle to explore the rest of the world. When he did, he left his childhood friend Strongbow and his brother Chon Po behind. So, Sirithe, you know what Brewfest is, right?
Yeah, it's that event where you can kill a boss and get a Kodo or a Ram, or if you're me, get lucky and get both.
Ooh, nice flex. Yeah, pretty much. Well, there's a little story about the origin of Brewfest here, because actually Chen Stormstout is the reason we have it in the first place. So, on his travels, Chen eventually ended up in Dunmoreau and met up with the infamous dwarven brewer Grimboo's Thunderbrew, who he challenged.
That's a great name.
It is an amazing name, isn't it? Very metal. So he challenged Grimboo's to a drinking contest to decide who was the better brewer. Now, in the end, when the two of them were, nearly passed out from drinking each other's products, Chen declared Grimboo's to be the superior brewer. However, Grimboo's liked Chen's beer more. After a brief, light-hearted argument, the two of them decided to hold a contest in Dunmoreau for all of the dwarves to taste their two beers and decide which was best. Now, Corin Diabrew, a dark iron dwarf brewmaster, blagged his way into getting a position in this contest as well. Wasn't particularly deserved. I think they were just both too nice to say no to him, to be honest. So in this contest, Chen and Grimboo's were neck and neck, but Corin Diabrew only had 2 votes. One from himself, and one from Chen, out of pity. When he saw the way it was going, the dark-iron dwarf attacked them both in anger, and Chen fought him off. So in the end, Grimboo's brew was declared to be the victor by a single vote. This contest Chen helped to establish was the origin of what we now know as Brewfest. When Chen left and travelled onward, he left behind his jug of 1,000 cups with Grimboo's as a souvenir. So what's interesting with that is it tells us something about Chen. He didn't vote for himself in this contest, despite the fact that you could, and both of the other participants did, and he lost by 1 vote. So he was willing to be selfless, even though he didn't get anything out of it, which is pretty cool. So while he was in and around the kind of dwarven lands, he did go on to fight alongside King Magni Bronzebeard for at least part of the Third War, and was declared to be a friend of Ironforge as a result. So he then was involved in the founding of Durotar. So Chen's journey has brought him to the land of Durotar, and his latest brew that he was working on at the time had a lot of really weird ingredients, and he was struggling to get hold of them. He'd almost lost hope when he ran into Rexar, the travelling Mok'Nathal Beastmaster.
Or Dreadlord if you're Dracoris.
There's a real chance, but not... even at this stage, I think there's a possibility Rexar's a Dreadlord, but...
Because at this point he's at Durotar, so...
Yeah. Or in a shallow grave in the Eastern Kingdoms. If you want to know what we're talking about, have a listen to the bonus episode we did with Charity. It's a pet theory of mine that's probably going to turn out to not be true. Chen asked Rexar to retrieve some ingredients for him. A barrel of thunder water, the egg of a thunder phoenix, and a sprig of thunder bloom. Chen was overjoyed when Rexar returned with the ingredients, and then he mixed this special brew and offered it to Rexar, who nearly toppled over from the strength of it, and asked if Chen was trying to kill him. I think this was probably one of those sour beers that you Americans seem to like. I tried one recently and it made my tongue sad. Not a fan of the sour beers. Anyway.
You probably just haven't had a good sour yet.
I've tried a couple, to be fair.
I can hear Jin judging you already.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, Chen figured that he would have to further examine and refine his recipe, having completed one phase of his journey. He decided to stop brewing for the time being and join Rexar on his travels, so that he could better appreciate the land he was in and get some context for the ingredients he was using. As part of this, he ended up going on a secret mission to Theramore Isle with Rexar to help the Horde find out why the humans were attacking them. A pretty big deal for a random brewmaster of another nation to end up involved in. He ended up also being involved in the attack that they launched that ended with the death of Grand Admiral Proudmoore. So this is, on the one hand, you've got Chen being declared a friend to the dwarves, and on the other hand, he helped the Horde kill an Alliance Admiral. He's been playing both sides here. Now,
you could almost say he's morally grey.
He's definitely on Team Purple, let's put it that way. So, some people called Chen a hero of the Horde for his role at Theramore, but his own memories of the event later paint the situation in a more complex light. I don't think Chen ever really feels good about what happened at Theramore. Now, after the battle, he spent some more time in Durotar, and he actually taught the Brewmaster ways to some others there before travelling on. Like the rest of his people, he did maintain independence at this time. Most Pandaren hadn't met anybody that we're, any of the nations that we're familiar with yet at this point. So he maintained his independence, and he didn't join the Horde or the Alliance, despite having helped both. Now, in the Stone Talon Mountains, Chen then went off searching for a rare ingredient called Indelium hops for his brews. He came across some goblin machines clear-cutting a swath of destruction through the forest where the last of this Indelium grew. With the help of a keeper of the grove, Keeper Oromin, Chen fought the goblins off, but the damage had already been done, and only 2 clusters of the hops actually survived. Oromin offered some of these hops to Chen in return for saving them, but because they were so rare, Chen refused to take it. He also came across an orc blade master around this time, named Rajak, who was looking to challenge the best fighters. Chen kicked his ass, but didn't realise that this was going to come back to haunt him later. Humiliated and frustrated, Rajak actually ventured to Outland and drank demon blood, becoming a fell orc, just so that he could have the power to win if he ever encountered Chen again. At one time, Chen Stormstout was held captive by 3 ogres, who argued whether he'd taste like bear, rabbit, or crow. I honestly have no idea how Blizzard haven't been sued by J.R.R. Tolkien's estate for this, because it's just a blatant rip-off of The Hobbit. But basically, Chen suggested that they each go and hunt one of those animals, so they'd have the tastes fresh in their mind for when they actually ate Chen. And while they did that, he'd brew some beer for them. So, that happened. And Chen brewed their beer while they cooked the animals. After a night of eating and drinking and partying, Chen, as the only one who was still sober, just got up and walked away. He literally drank 3 ogres under the table to survive. He also brags that he once participated in a drinking contest with 5 dwarves in Airy Peak. So, I mean, that's in addition to what went on at Brewfest. Other stories told by Chen over the years about his journeys include tricking Murlocs into making themselves into a stew. Yeah, something fishy about that story. And teaching ice avatars and frost giants to dance. If that's a reference to something, I'm not quite sure what, but... Basically, if Chen wasn't already a monk, he would be a bard. You know, he's got a story for every occasion. Now, Chen's letters to his niece, Sirithe Stormstout, are what sparked her desires to explore her home and eventually beyond. After following in Chen's footsteps, Sirithe, his niece, was kidnapped by Rajak, the arsehole blade master that we mentioned earlier, who became a Fell-Orc. And she was brought to an island where Jahara Darksquall was demanding to know where she could find the Pearl of Pandaria. Miraculously, Chen appeared out of nowhere on an X-53 touring rocket, which is a mount you can get in-game, just in time to save his old friend Strongbow, who was Lili's protector, from dying to Rajak's sword. Bo was bleeding heavily, but Rajak and Chen duelled, and this climaxed with Chen's Storm, Earth and Fire spell going up against the Blade Master's Mirror Image spell. I like it when in the lore they reference the spells in game, you know. It's good. It kind of ties things in. So Chen was able to steal the Orc's sword at the last moment, throwing it to spear Jahara through the chest to save Lili. Rajak then attempted to attack Chen from behind, but got stabbed by Bo. After many years apart, you know, Chen hadn't seen Bo since he left the Wandering Isle. The 2 adult pandas greeted each other, but Bo was dying and he knew it. He asked Chen to take Lili home to the Wandering Isle, and so the 2 of them left on Chen's rocket. When he got back to the Wandering Isle, Chen greeted his brother Chong Po and the rest of the citizens as he returned home for the first time in years. Lili asked him if they'd go looking for Pandaria one day, but Chen said that for the time being he was just happy to be home. So after getting home, Chen went about settling into his first permanent home, and it's exactly what you'd imagine for a Pandaren brewmaster, you know. He settled into this little house, this little cottage with comfy furniture and pans hanging over the stove and scrolls and decorations. You know, imagine a hobbit hole, basically, you know. So he was happy and satisfied, and he called returning home his new adventure. Ever the brewmaster, he spent all of his time with experimental brewing projects, which is doubly impressive because there wasn't much diversity or variety of ingredients on the Wandering Isle. One night, after being invited over for dinner at his brother Chon Po's home, an argument erupted between Chon Po and Lili over their past adventures. When Chen tried to sort of tactfully end the argument, Chon Po said that if Lili hadn't run off, Strongbow would still be alive. Obviously that upset her.
Yeah, that's kind of a dick thing to say.
It is indeed, isn't it? So they had this whole massive family row. And in the end, when Chen was speaking to Chon Po about this, he realised something. Chon Po didn't disapprove of what Lili was doing. He was transferring his frustration about Chen leaving years ago onto her. Eventually, Lili would come to Chen's cottage and express a desire for them to go adventuring together. At first, Chen refused. He said his home on the Wandering Isle was now more of an adventure to him, because he'd never owned a home of his own. When she left in frustration, Chen smiled and noted that his family was a hard-headed bunch. What I don't think he realised was that Lili wasn't listening, so she left. she left the island, and she went off for an adventure. Chen was confronted by his brother and told what happened, and basically his brother said, you go and find her, you know, this is on you. You're the reason she wants to leave. You're the reason she thinks travelling is a good idea. Find her and drag her back. And Chen says, well, look, I'll go and find her. You know, she's only young, it's not safe. But I'm not going to make her come home either. So Chen went and found her. Now, this is all recounted in the stories called the Pearl of Pandaria, which I believe is a comic. This is dealt with in episode 131 of Morally Grey. Now, the reason I say this is that it took them an hour and a half to do this story justice. We're not going to be able to fit it all in here. Suffice it to say that he tracked Lily down, and they had some crazy adventures, which ended with them actually finding Pandaria. And the next time we see Chen Stormstout is in the Mists of Pandaria expansion. So Chen appears in and narrates the opening cinematic of the expansion, in which he interrupts a battle at the Shrine of Fellowship between a shipwrecked orc and a human, whose vessels had annihilated one another off the coast of Pandaria. Using his superior martial prowess, he actually forces them to team up against him, and ultimately makes them realise the beauty of their surroundings, putting an end to their conflict. The cinematic ends with Chen saying, "To ask why we fight is to ask why the leaves fall. It is in their nature. Perhaps there is a better question. Why do we fight? To protect home and family, to preserve balance and bring harmony. For my kind, the true question is, what is worth fighting for?" So, Chen is particularly involved in the beginning quests of the Valley of the Four Winds area, where he's visiting Pandaria for the first time with his niece Lily. Other than exploring Pandaria, Chen's goal at the start of the expansion seems to be to re-establish contact with the Pandaria branch of the Stormstout family, having been separated back when Shenzin Su stopped returning to the mainland. As he and Lily visit farms in the valley, they meet a Pandaren called Mudmug, from whom they learn about the Stormstout brewery.
I bet you Mudmug is really good with achievements.
Why's that?
Because of his name.
Oh, Mud. Do you know, that went right over my head. Yeah, grats on that pun. For anyone not reading between the lines there, the as I wasn't, the podcast Wow Grats, or just Grats, Wow Grats on Twitter, Mud is one of the hosts. He's also one of our patrons who we shouted out earlier. And it's all based around achievements. Definitely worth a listen if you get a chance. So, you've broken me a little bit with that one, I've got to be honest. So Chen visits the brewery, but is under control of Uncle Gao, who seems to be jealous of the other Stormstouts. Now again, I'm copping out slightly, but I'm going to refer you to Dungeon Fables episode 110. Again, it does this justice in a way that we just can't. So go listen to Ali as she runs the instance, or go run it yourself. But I mean,
do both.
Yeah, well, do both at the same time.
Doing
it's
both
great.
at the same time is pretty fun. I did
Absolutely.
that with the Siege of Orgrimmar episodes.
There are some fantastic voice lines in there as well, and and Ali has all of them in her show. So yeah, go check that out, episode 110. But really short Cliff Notes version. The brewery was filled with Hosen and elementals, which is one of my favourite puns in the history of WoW. Right, they are ale, as in beer, elementals, and I love it.
And a lot of them get you drunk when you kill them.
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
So yeah, it's an awesome dungeon. Now, at the very conclusion of the Valley of the Four Winds storyline, the Shadowpan, who are the kind of monk order of the Pandaren, sort of like the secret police Pandaren, aren't they? They're incredibly badass. They face an invasion from the Mantid, who break through the Serpent's Spine. Now, when the Serpent's Spine being the big wall that's kind of like, it's like the Great Wall of China analogy, isn't it? You know, nice bit of cultural appropriation there for Blizzard. So, when all hope seems lost, it was Chen Stormstout who actually saved the day. He was instrumental in the defence of the Stoneplough village. Alongside Mudmug and his niece Lily, Chen successfully rallied not only the scattered Pandaren population, but also he managed to unite, temporarily, a group of Night Elf Sentinels with a cadre of Tauran Sunwalkers, and got them to work together to defend Stoneplough village from the invasion of the Mantid. Now,
I bet you he wouldn't be able to get that to happen now.
Well, I'm not sure, you know. I was just going to say, like, in terms of groups that you could get to work together, Night Elves and Tauran, you'd think are generally okay. You know, you've got the cross-pollination with the Druids and stuff there, haven't you? You know, I think,
but that was still pre-Teldrassil.
True, but I even
The Night Elves are rightfully a little bit angry still.
You're right, but I reckon if they're going to let anybody in, it's going to be the Tauren. You know, I think of all the people in the Horde who you might not shoot on sight, I think Tauren are probably top of the list.
Probably.
And that's coming as someone who does play Night Elf occasionally. So yeah, and this was important because it marked the first time that Alliance and Horde forces had fought together side by side for a common cause since the Wrathgate. Now...
I would have thought we teamed up against Deathwing before that, but...
Not really, I don't think. We launched separate offensives, didn't we?
I'm thinking of the raid now. And
well, thinking about Dragon Soul, there aren't any...
Yeah, even running it Horde side, you fly on the Alliance ship.
Do you really?
Yeah, because you're with Keanu Reeves and Sky Captain, whatever. I know they're both referenced. It's Keanu Reeves and Swayze.
Yeah, Swayze.
Because they're references to Point Break.
Of course they are. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen it Alliance side. I didn't think I'd seen it Horde side.
Yeah, it's the same ship and same characters on Horde side.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Fair enough. So yeah, while having a drink at the Lazy Turnip, Chen was asked by the adventurers, obviously us, to taste the brew of somebody named Ella. Now, Chen liked this and actually recommended that Ella could speak with Uncle Gao about joining the Stormstout brewery. So he's still got his goals in mind, even with everything going on with the Mantid attacking and the Alliance and the Horde coming in and being arseholes and ruining Pandaria. Chen's still trying to kind of build up his family's brewery and work on that kind of stuff, which I think is pretty cool. The Brewmaster isn't just like a fun in-game mechanic to give the pandas a tank, is it? It's to Chen, it's a real serious, important thing. Like, his beers are important to him, I always like that.
He's got his priorities.
Yeah.
And they are beer.
I like it. I like when, an occupation in game is treated as important.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Chen and Lily can also be seen during the Wanderers Festival at Turtle Beach in the Crossround Wilds. Now, after hearing that the rest of the Stormstouts in Pandaria, who Chen had wanted to meet up with and get to know, had all travelled beyond the Serpent's Spine to fight the Mantid, Chen went after them. And he does find them. He finds Big Dan Stormstout sleeping at the Sunset Brew Garden in the Dread Wastes. He finds the body of Evie Stormstout, who'd been slain by the Mantid. And he actually takes her body to a secluded grove and holds a funeral for her. He then finds Han Stormstout encased in amber beneath Corvess. I'm going to assume that Sirithe understands the reference there.
I did. And this is the first time I've heard of it since, like I said, I skipped a lot of Pandaria.
Yeah. So Han Stormstout obviously being a reference to Han Solo, encased in amber in the way that Han was encased in carbonite, which is pretty cool. Assuming that he's dead within the amber, Chen actually drags the amber block back to the Sunset Brew Garden. And finally, he finds Mama Stormstout in a chamber beneath the Heart of Fear, being mind-controlled by the Mantid, which sucks. So yeah, and after he unites his family, Chen can actually be found near the grave of Evie Stormstout, along with all of the characters I just mentioned, and Lily.
I read that in the notes as Chen could be found in the grave of Evie Stormstout. I'm like, wait, what the fuck did I just miss?
Yeah, no, that would be weird. So then, in Binan Village, or Bainan Village, I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce that, Chen is seen taking care of Vol'jin after the events of the Dagger in the Dark scenario, where Vol'jin gets stabbed in the neck by one of Garrosh's assassins. Chen tasks the player with gathering needles to help Vol'jin fight the poison in his body, and afterwards takes him to Shadowpan Monastery to recuperate. Now, as a result of his presence at the Shadowpan Monastery, Chen grew close to Yalia Sage Whisper, one of the Shadowpan. In fact, upon reaching Zuchin village, Chen was actually able to convince Yalia to reunite with her family, and he found himself bonding and becoming an instant hit with her family as well. It's good when the in-laws like you. Such joy was not meant to last, though, as Vol'jin and a group of Shadowpan came to defend the village after realising that the Zandalari were going to attack. Although Chen wanted to stay and defend this village that had become like a home for him, he understood that the villagers would need the leadership of a Pandaren to lead them to safety, with Yalia and his niece by his side. After ensuring that the villagers would be safe, and instructing his niece to stay with them to help protect them, Chen travelled back to the monastery, where he joined Vol'jin and a small group of Shadowpan monks, as they travelled to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms to prevent the Zandalari from resurrecting Warlord Kao, general of the Thunder King. Didn't really work. The group ended up being captured by the Zandalari. They bore witness to the resurrection of Warlord Kao, and they were imprisoned by the Zandalari on the Isle of Thunder. However, with Vol'jin's help, they were able to escape the isle, and they returned to the Shadowpan Monastery. After returning, Chen joined the 33 in order to defend the monastery from the Zandalari. This is basically just a full-on defensive fight against a shit ton of Zandalari. 33 against, I think it's like 500-odd Zandalari trolls. And it's kind of like, the what's it called, the 300? Sparta?
Yeah, the Battle of Thermopylae?
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it right. But
yeah, no, that's
yes.
right. That was accurate, yeah. It's basically a redo of that, vastly outnumbered. So while preparing traps for the enemy, Yalia and Chen actually admitted their feelings for each other. They kissed, which I'm not quite sure how that works with pandas and their mouths, and they stated their desire to start a family. I do know how that one works. No need to give me a talk about the birds and the bees. So, after successfully repealing the Zandalari onslaught, Chen and Yalia parted ways, with him promising to return, and her promising to wait for him while she helped the Shadowpan. As far as I'm aware, he doesn't actually come back.
Damn, she said she wanted kids, I'm out.
So, Chen then joined Vol'jin when the Darkspear chieftain returned to Durotar to begin the Darkspear Rebellion. And so Chen is involved in that entire questline, the whole bringing down Garrosh thing. Chen and Lili were then at the peak of serenity in Kunlai, instructing a group of children, when the monastery was attacked by the Burning Legion. In, the expansion, Legion.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So with the aid of a monk adventurer, they fight against the demons and they deliver the children to safety. After the peak is destroyed, I would say spoiler, but Legion was how many years ago now? Chen returns with the survivors to the Wandering Isle, where he plays
a part. It doesn't
part.
Feel like Legion was that long ago, but it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's, 20... When was Legion? 2015? 2016?
I think 16.
Yeah.
God.
So yeah, Chen took the survivors to the Wandering Isle and played a part in the formation of the Order of the Broken Temple, also known as the monk class order hall thing. You can also see Chen during the Spring Balloon Festival. He can be found at the ruins of Shandaral within the Crystal Song Forest of Northrend, where he offers balloon rides for groups of 3. During the ride, he will admit that despite his fond memories of travelling around Northrend, he never spent much time in the Crystal Song Forest. He talks about meeting the Gorlock Oracles and the Wolvar Frenzyheart tribe of Shalazar Basin, and that he found them to be strange creatures. Says the talking panda. He encourages his guests to share their stories as well, so that he can focus on making sure he doesn't crash the balloon into Dalaran. We're then into BFA, and actually, when I was doing the notes, I thought, oh god, I'm finished already, there's not going to be a lot here. But I'd forgotten that, obviously, in 8.3, we went back to Pandaria.
Mm-hmm.
So, upon hearing word that the Mogu clans had set their sights on the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, Chen and Lili were among those who came to defend the Vale. To their shock, they discovered that the Mogu had completely overtaken Kunlai Summit. Chen deduced that the Mogu saw the Golden Lotus's focus on N'Zoth as the perfect time to strike the Vale. Seeking to stop them, Chen, Lili, and obviously Azeroth's champion, mounted Chen's kite in order to scout their numbers. However, during the mission, they come under fire and are forced to the ground, and Chen gets injured, and the kite is reduced to a big ball of flames. It's very sad. With his head hurting from his injuries, Chen declared that the only solution would be for his allies to bring the abandoned brew caravan and save the brew. Yeah.
Priorities.
Save the beer. He's got his priorities straight. Chen was confident that not only would this bring him back to full strength, but it would do wonder for the morale of those fighting in the Vale. I've got to say here, this is at least the second time we've come across where Chen has real confidence that he's made a good beer, and it turns out that he hasn't, right? So, to that end, we rescue a yak called Moby from the Mogu, and yeah, we use it to deliver the brew to Chen. While Chen focuses on the brew, as he should, Lily calls upon the allies to strike against the Mogu, and, gives you a bunch of daily quests. As part of this, she tasks you to take out the Mogu commanders, and once that happens, Chen, Lily, and, the Azeroth champion use the yak to head back to the safety of the Gate of the August Celestials. Then, not satisfied with the damage she's already done to the Mogu, Lily decides to use her uncle's brew as a weapon, much to his distress. So yeah, we end up throwing a lot of beer at the Mogu, and it kills them. Deciding to look on the bright side, Chen does note that at least there are now fewer Mogu to contend with. Knowing that they'd done all they could, they head off to Mistfall Village in order to inform the Rajani of what they're up against, and that is where Chen stays for the rest of BFA. And that's the last we've seen of him. Chen did not turn up in Shadowlands so far, touch wood.
Thank goodness.
And I can't really think of any reason why he would.
Yeah, because that would probably mean he's dead, and I don't want him to be dead.
Actually, thinking about it, we haven't come across any Pandaren in this expansion yet, have we?
No. But to be fair, we don't come across Pandaren in lore a lot, other than in Mists.
No, but it's interesting, because even on their own island, they must have died sometimes, right? God knows, a whole bunch of them died during just that 8.3 thing we just talked about. Like, where do they go? Presumably
Could
they go
the
to
Kyrian
Shadowlands.
not find their way through the Mists?
Oh God, maybe not.
They do kind of suck.
They do, yeah. Oh, that's really weird. But yeah, I do wonder where the Pandaren end up in the Shadowlands. Maybe they go to their... Maybe the August Celestials take care of them and they go to a different realm. Don't know.
Pocket realm like Bonsamdi's?
Possibly, yeah.
Or there's just a giant, brewery that they all go to.
I want to say, this is why, I completely agree with Ali from Dungeon Fables and Live Laugh Lore. We need scenarios. We need Shadowlands scenarios where we get to go to different afterlives and kind of see some of the realms other than the 4 that we get to see. I would
want to see the Murloc one and the Panda one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now if the Panda one's not a giant brewery, I will be really disappointed.
Or just like a big field full of bamboo, and actually they just act like real pandas, and they just sit and eat bamboo. That'd be cool. But yeah, so who is Chen Stormstout after all that? He's a gifted fighter and a storyteller, and he's an adventurer in a way that not many characters in WoW really are. He's travelled all over Azeroth, and for the most part, he's done that because he wanted to. He's still a pretty chill dude, which is even more impressive given that he can kick most people's asses up between their ears at will. I'm a big fan of the guy, and I hope we get to see him again in future. What do you think?
Yeah, I really like Chen. I think he's a really interesting character because I think of almost all the lore characters, he's the most like the player character. Yeah. Where he just kind of goes around and does quests and, does whatever he wants to do. And I think I kind of like him more because now that I have been splitting my time between Alliance and Horde, it's nice to see a lore character who does that.
I can get behind that. And actually, one of the things that's kind of cool that you just kind of alluded to. That's the word I'm looking for. One of the things you just kind of alluded to. He is like a player character in that he does stuff in an area until he's bored, and then he kind of goes, going to move on to a new zone now. It's maybe he out-leveled these zones, I don't know. But it genuinely does seem like he just potters around in an area for a bit, does stuff, and then goes, I'm going to go somewhere else now. As opposed to like other characters who, when we tell their story and they move from one zone to another, it's for a very specific reason. They're following a breadcrumb, essentially, aren't they? Chen just seems to give up on his own sometimes and move on. I kind of like that about him.
Yeah, very much like he even does gathering quests. I mean, he's searching for his ingredients, and he needs a certain amount to make his beers. And
unlike fucking Khadgar, he actually uses the ingredients. Right? He doesn't ask you for 9,000 of something and then only need one.
Oh, God.
One thing that's quite cool as well is that aside from, like, the Night Elves, really, we don't see very many characters who are concerned about the environment in WoW, particularly. Obviously, BFA a little bit more so, because they're literally worried about the world. But that's due to, like, a massive sword sticking out of it, and a specific external threat, as opposed to their own consumption, right? Now, I mentioned that there was one point where, in the Stone Talon Mountains, where the goblins had been clear-cutting, and there wasn't much left of these hops. And these hops were the specific reason he'd gone to that area in the first place. And actually, he looks at it and goes, do you know what, I don't want them. There's not many left, replant those things. And that kind of... They say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. But that's about as close to ethical consumption as we've seen in WoW, I think. He chooses not to use those ingredients that he specifically came for and to have them replanted instead. And I think that's very cool. Yeah,
the direct opposite of all the Azerite collecting we were doing. Hey, the planet's bleeding out. You know what we should do? Use the blood. Use it. It's strong.
Let's throw it at each other.
Borrowed power.
That's a thought, actually. Why at no point did any lore character say, there's lots of rocks around. We could just cover this stuff back up. Like, we could heal the wounds, literally, with rock. Surely that would have been easier,
I'm going to go with Sylvanas. The jailer told her to kill things, and Anduin was like, well, she's got this power boost, so we need a power boost, or she's going to kill us.
Yeah, true. But, I mean, they also could have just buried Magni so we didn't have to listen to him. That would have worked as well.
Yeah. But you know what? He, is a rock now, so I'm sure his affinity would have just, raised him out of the ground.
Probably.
Or then the whole planet would start talking with Magni's voice.
Actually, can't he just phase straight through shit? Don't we see him literally just phase straight through a door in one of the Titan facilities?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I kind of rushed through those because they got a little repetitive.
Nobody puts Magni in the corner. So yeah, anything else about Chen?
No, I don't think I got anything else. I just, like you said, I hope we get to see more of him because he's a really fun character.
The thing for me is I'm not sure how we're going to see more of him. I thought it was a really nice touch that they brought us back to Pandaria in 8.3, but they can't do that regularly. Yeah. You can't have every new world-ending threat that turns up decide to go and poke Pandaria for some reason just so that we can see Chen. Although that would be quite cool.
But Chen is also a character that's a little easier than, trying to shoehorn Terran Zoo into something.
Yeah.
Knowing that he is a traveler, it's believable that he would leave Pandaria again.
True. I also feel like if we do end up in the Dragon Isles at some point, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see some sort of Mogu analogy there. With the fact that they... Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they sought power over there as well. Bearing in mind the way they went after some of the other Titan facilities back in the day. If there are going to be Titan facilities on the Dragon Isles, which I think there probably are, it wouldn't be a shock to see the Mogu, which might at least give us a reason. Which might at least give us a reason to look for some pandas. You could see us asking for Lorewalker Cho's help, for example.
Oh, Cho. I love him.
Which could easily lead to Chen accompanying him or something. So yeah, I suppose it is possible.
I hope Blizzard's listening to this and taking furious notes on how to put Chen back into the story.
I'm 90% sure.
I doubt it.
Yeah,
but...
I'm 90% sure they're not listening to this. And if they were, we need to find out and remove my comment about cultural appropriation from earlier on in the episode. But on that note, dude, I think we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so.
To ask why we fight is to ask why the leaves fall.
So, if you guys want to know where you can find us, you can find me on Twitter at Sirithe. You can find Dracoris at Smiting Titan. You can find the show at LFR Wowcast. You can email us at lfrwowpod@gmail.com. And you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/LFRWowcast. Thank you guys again so much for listening. We'll have this episode in your ears on our normal time. And probably a day or two later, we'll have a bonus episode with Demi going all over Death Knights and Paladins. And I think I might just sit back and eat some popcorn and watch Demi and Dracoris go at it.
Dude, you're absolutely going to have to be the deciding vote on this. Do not leave, do not leave me on my own. I think Demi will kick my ass. But yeah, it's going to be fun. Oh, one thing we didn't mention during the news segment, which I feel really bad about actually, is that I did do an extra bonus episode of the Third Faction about a week ago, which was the first in a series of D&D Does Lore that I'm going to be doing with Demi. It was a lot of fun. We talked about the recent 9.1 cinematics and some speculation stuff, and that's now available on the Third Faction podcast's feed. So please do go and check that out.
And I'll throw a link to that feed in the show notes today, too. That is on my queue for today. Which is probably why I forgot it, because I haven't listened yet.
Shame on you. Shame.
Yeah, well, I don't have an hour-long commute anymore, so my podcast listening time has drastically decreased.
Fair. And with that, folks, I think we're going to get out of here. Get out of there. Out of here.
Yep, I think so. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I am very uncomfortable with the energy that we've created in the studio today.